Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installation of the Lion's Den. My name is Dr. Ashanti Carter, and I serve as the Director of Community College Partnerships at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. And boy, oh boy, do we have a treat for you today. Guess what, you guys? This is National Transfer Student Week. And at CDU, we are acknowledging all of our transfer students. You're probably thinking, but Dr. Ashanti, what's a transfer student? It's someone who attended a community college and then they've transferred to a four-year institution. I myself, I am a proud transfer student, go Antelope Valley College, and I transferred to UC San Diego. But you know what I'm most proud of, you guys? I am an alum of Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. So, with that being said, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists that we have with us today. I would like to start with Dr. Francisco C. Rodriguez. He is the Chancellor of the Los Angeles Community College District. Oh, yes, you guys, we have a thought leader with us. So he's been in this role since 2014. Did you guys know that the Los Angeles Community College District, it's the largest community college district in the nation with 9 accredited colleges and 200,000 student enrollments. As a CEO, he is responsible for strategic and long-range academic planning, fiscal stewardship, facilities and capital outlay, and enrollment management. Let's give Chancellor Rodriguez a round of applause. All right, next we have one of my favorite people at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science, and that's Dr. Carlisle. So Dr. David M. Carlisle has been the president and chief executive officer of Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science in the Watts Willowbrook area of Los Angeles County since 2011. You guys, he has been the longest serving president at CDU. He is also a board certified internal medicine specialist who earned his BA from Wesleyan University and his medical degree both from Brown and his MPH and PhD in health sciences from the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. So let's give a round of applause for President Carlisle. All right. Okay, gentlemen, we have a jam-packed conversation. So I want to start with this. Talk to us about what it is that you do. Some people may not know, like, what's a chancellor? What is a president of a college? So we'll start with you, Chancellor Rodriguez. What is it that you do?
Well, I unlock and unleash the dreams of individuals in our community through education. I move people through poverty with education so that they can get on the pathway to prosperity. And I do so through the amazing talents of our faculty, our administrators, and our other students. So I'm a dream maker and trying to put the resources together so that our 9 community colleges that serve the Los Angeles County can be well-placed, well-positioned, and well-served. So I'm the person that tries to think about the long-range implications of both federal and state and local investments and to position our colleges for tremendous success. And you see them listed over my shoulder there. So that's as a chief executive officer, I report to a 7-member elected board of trustees. And then there are about close to 10,000 other employees that work for the LA CCD. So ultimately, that's my responsibility. But the best way to say it, Dr. Carter, is that we provide the opportunity for people to move through and get economic and social mobility through a high quality, low cost education. So I'm proud to have been here. It's my 10th year now here.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. President Carlisle, talk to us. What is it that a president of a university like CDU does?
Well, it's a lot, just like Chancellor Rodriguez said. You know, if there's a one-word description of what I do, I like to call myself an enabler. And you know, I enable people to succeed.
Mm,
I like to, even though my position's, pretty visible, I really like to work behind the scenes to empower students, parents, faculty, staff, to succeed in whatever they're doing. And this is really a pretty fulfilling thing. Because we've been doing very well. Our biomedical sciences master's degree program is ranked #1 in the country. We've been ranked #3 as a value-added university. We're #2 in terms of diversity in the country. And so these are all high watermarks for CDU, but we're not going to sit there and just let the water stay. We're going to keep pushing the water level upwards. So it's, I'm very proud to be at CDU, but I'm especially proud because of the fact that CDU is what we call a community-founded university. We are here on behalf of the residents, the young people, students of South Los Angeles primarily. That was what we were founded to do more than 50 years ago.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. So both of you have doctoral degrees. Can you talk about that? Like, what was your college pathway? We have some students who are watching, and they're probably thinking, chancellor, president, what does it take to do that? I'll start with you. I'm going to stay on you, Dr. Carlisle. Describe your pathway to earning your doctoral degrees.
Well, it wasn't hard. I remember flunking my first biology test in college and having to recover from that. I remember being a first-year medical student going, this anatomy stuff isn't working. I need to change everything. Totally changed, revamped the way I studied for that class. It worked out, yes. But like everybody in healthcare, the word tenacious applies because we've all faced challenges. And but you do get knocked down. It's like playing, football. You're gonna get knocked on your butt, every once in a while. And so the question is not that you get knocked down, it's how you get up, basically.
I love it. I love that. But when you said that you didn't do well, I find that so hard to believe. You guys, Dr. Carlisle is probably one of the smartest people that I know. So to hear him say that, that means you can still keep going. Don't let one class stop you. All right, Chancellor Rodriguez, talk to us about your pathway.
Sure, I'm happy to. And I'm inspired by Dr. Carlisle. We've been partners ever since I arrived in Los Angeles and knew each other back in our Sacramento days. So just have a lot of tremendous respect. So the ability to hang out this time with him during this session where we're celebrating National Transfer Student Week is a real treat for me. So thank you for the invitation. But, a first-generation college student, traditional Mexican parents who only had 8 years of formal education, but they did know they were smart enough, and they are incredibly brilliant, to know that education was the path forward. So, I did what I needed to do. I wasn't a tremendous student, but I worked hard. My persistence was my resistance, I would say. And I just had to keep going and keep trucking. I grew up in inner city San Francisco, and like so many other inner city students and whatnot, was exposed to lots of different things, different pathways, some good, not so good, but always maintained the sense that an education was the right thing to do. My parents were laborers. My mother worked in a laundry factory, my father in a factory. So I knew that education was the way forward. Like so many of the students that we serve, I never lose sight that I am the students that I serve. So that helps me a lot. So when I went to the university and changed my major from civil engineering to ethnic studies, Chicano studies, and then went on, I took several years off, 7 years off between bachelor's and master's, and another 5 between master's and PhD. So it's a non-traditional pathway, but one that I went to school for my graduate degrees when I was older. And I was frankly more mature, a better student. I was a parent by then, and I knew what I wanted to do. So I wasn't quite the knucklehead I was when I was a young man. And I say that with reverence and with the sense that experience can be a tremendous teacher. A failure can be a tremendous teacher. And I wanted to underscore what Dr. Carlisle mentioned. It wasn't all successes. but I persisted. And I resisted the narratives of people who were brown and black and poor that couldn't do certain things. I just resisted those narratives. There was too much history, there was too much lineage, there was too much pride. There was too many examples of people who worked hard, who paved the ways, so that folks like me, who were first-gen English language learner, could get access to a high-quality education. So I believe that, and I wanted to hold true to that principle and that promise, and now hopefully carrying the torch forward for others. So yeah, it was that persistence, being a little bit more mature when I went to my graduate study, focusing on what I wanted to do, and then working just a little harder. When I couldn't give a little more, I did. And opportunity and luck and circumstance all lined up to where I've had the privilege of working at several institutions, leading several institutions, and I've been very proud to work with some great people, because our success is determined by those who we work with, those who we hire, those who we empower. Back to the word that Dr. Carlisle used, those who we enable. I love that word, enable in a positive way to do great things. So yeah, non-traditional journey. I went out of state, Oregon State for my doctoral degree, being a native Californian, but sometimes you got to go where the program fits your interests and fits your circumstances. And I did, and I have no regrets. Excellent program. And now have the opportunity to use some of that skill.
Wow, that's great. It sounds like the both of you actually cultivated what research scholar Tara J. Yasso refers to as community cultural wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So she states that communities of color, you
Okay.
nurture 6 forms of capital. So it sounds like both of you are very rich in resistance capital, right? So the capital to resist those stereotypes and, the oppressive narrative that often Black and brown folks are presented with. So bravo to the both of you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories. So I want to just take a little detour and talk about community college and transferring. So as both of you know, COVID-19, it really did a number on us, right? Of all people. And it has impacted college admissions.
Yes.
So thus forth, I'll start with you, Chancellor Rodriguez. How do you still see any residual effects of COVID-19 and community college admissions?
Mm-hmm. The residual effects of Dr. Carter have been both positive and negative. On the negative side is the obvious. We lost over 20% of our student body over those 2 years. Our students who live on the margins sometimes, economic margins, technological margins, healthcare margins, education margins, and whatnot, childcare margins. It was just enough of a nudge to have students stop out, and the greatest impact on those who were unhoused, who were hungry, who were disconnected to technology, who were uninsured, lack of healthcare, and had little education. So, and that's a good portion of who we serve. So we had to become very cognizant of who was not at our institution, and then to do warm outreach, research, to try to do everything we could to provide support to bring them back. We had tremendous federal support to do that. We had financial incentives to re-enroll, to reintegrate themselves. And sometimes it worked, but it was 2 years of a real drop in those who could most benefit from higher education. So that was the bad part. The good part was we found out that our infrastructure needed to be strengthened, technological infrastructure. Our cybersecurity needed to be strengthened. Our online student support services and academic delivery could benefit from being strengthened, that our teachers could do both on-ground, hybrid, synchronous, asynchronous, and in person, and to do that in a fluid way that would meet the needs of students. So by necessity, we had to adapt, learn, and grow as an institution. And in fact, we did. We didn't lay off a single person during that period. We didn't lower wages. We kept healthcare at a premium for everybody so they could keep working. And we ensured that folks had psychological safety, physical safety because of our protocols, And then we're mission-centric, student-centric, equity-minded centric to the environments that we were in. So we learned a lot. It was a collective traumatic experience, can be both healing and bonding and synergistic, and also as a way that gave us a common purpose, common vision to keep our doors open. We closed for a total of 4 days during that initial period. Remember March 2020 when, well, this will be over in a few days, few weeks, few months. Remember that, Dr. Carlisle? We'll get over this. We'll get a handle on this. Well, it wasn't. So we closed for a total of 4 days. And then over the subsequent 2-week period, transitioned because we moved our spring break. We had some other days. We transitioned almost 10,000 courses to an online format. Think about that, 10,000 courses. So our faculty, our staff, our administration stepped up in a way that I was so proud to witness, to enable, to empower, and to support. So a lot of good came out of the environment because we're a strong institution as a result, but the negative parts were those who have not yet to return, and those are our marginalized students. I'll be candid about that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you heard a lot about that. But what you said was you didn't have to lay off anyone. That's amazing. That's
no.
amazing. President Carlisle, talk to us about Charles Drew and how the university it went through that time of COVID-19, and what are the residual effects of COVID-19 and admissions?
Well, this is why it's interesting, because Chancellor Rodriguez and I are kind of doing the mind meld thing, because we would make some of the same points at CDU. We were fortunate that we didn't have to lay off anybody either during the pandemic. A really big thing. We did see our enrollment drop by about 17% overall.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw the impact as well. We saw that enrollment drop actually very late in the pandemic. It occurred in sort of year 3, not year 1, year 2.
Oh, okay.
Surprisingly. And then we definitely saw students who were more challenged socioeconomically experiencing the biggest impacts from the pandemic. And those students, many of them are frontline workers. You know, they might have full-time jobs, they might have part-time jobs out there delivering food, working in grocery stores, things like that. They were hammered. We had another student body, portion of the student body that was also hammered in a different way at CDU, and we're still recovering. And those are students in some of our nursing programs. And what we've discovered is in some of those programs, the students are clinical registered nurses, and they're coming back to school to become nurse practitioners. If there was any health professions group that was hammered hardest in COVID-19, it was registered nurses.
Yeah.
When the pandemic started to slowly regress and move backwards, some of those nurses they retired, they quit, they got burned out, they were overloaded. They just said, you know, I can't do anything else. And they couldn't go back to school. So those numbers are still recovering at CDU. But the thing that I was proudest of was how our university stepped up to serve an underserved community that people originally in the pandemic didn't think were getting COVID-19. And people like me with public health backgrounds are going, you just haven't measured the right measurement yet, because it's out there. And so I'm proud of our students, our faculty, our staff, who led the efforts working with LA County, a fire department, health department, public health department, to do testing for COVID-19 in a community that was not, that was still talking about the Tuskegee experiment, and was reluctant. When they saw young people who looked like them, who spoke the same language, who went to church with them, went to the same places to get groceries, they said, we can trust these individuals and we'll come in and get COVID-19 tested. So that was one of the things that made us proud. We were one of the leading testing centers in Los Angeles County on our campus.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Dr. Carlisle. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, Chancellor Rodriguez, California has what we call the master plan for transferring to a four-year institution. And it's a little different from states that I've worked in. After leaving CDU, I worked at Hopkins, which is in Maryland, and then I worked at George Washington University, which is in DC. So talk to us about the transfer rates of California community colleges to four-year institutions.
Well, the California Master Plan for Higher Education, a document that was envisioned in 1960, now those who were in positions of authority and influence at that time really believed that education was going to be the way forward, that there was a direct benefit of having an educated citizenry, that to provide a tiered system of public higher education in which all Californians, irrespective of income, race, gender, zip code, could be afforded a high quality and accessible education was what they laid out. So they had contemplated in the visioning of this document that the 12.5%, top 12.5% would be eligible for the University of California and its campuses. 33% of the high school graduates would be eligible for now the 23 campus CSU system. UC has 11 campuses and whatnot. And the remainder, every person would be eligible for 100% tuition-free community colleges, and that there were far fewer then, and there are 116 community colleges now serving about 2 million students. So the idea was that each would have a particular function, would confer particular types of degrees, and then that we would coincide with our private and independent colleges like CDU to provide an educated citizenry that was who would have access to a high quality, affordable education. So with that in mind, the community colleges have essentially the transfer function as a major mission, and as well as associate degrees and workforce certificates. So we have multiple functions. About 50% of our students who enroll say they want to transfer, irrespective of their academic background, because we have tremendous ironclad, seamless, articulated course pathways from our community colleges to CDU, from our community colleges to the University of California, from our community colleges through the associate degree for transfer program to the CSUs. So there's no mystery. You take these courses with these academic credentials, you're eligible for admission. So that takes the mystery out of it. And thankfully, the community colleges have made it easier for our students through technology, through making it clear that these are the courses that you need. And then from the University of California, transfer admission agreements or transfer admission guarantees are the path forward. So about a third of the California State University students who graduate begin at a community college, and whatnot. So that's a pretty good sign. Excuse me, actually, that's the University of California, 28-30%. UC, I get my numbers mixed up, and about 50% of CSU graduates begin at a community college. So we got tremendous pathways forward. I tell students, it's not where you begin, it's where you finish. Start here, and if you enroll at a community college full-time as a first-time student, Dr. Carter, or as a returning student, if you enroll full-time at any of the 116 community colleges, your 2 years are tuition-free. And that's a legislation that Dr. Carlisle knows that our district sponsored back in 2016-17, and it's now throughout the entire state of California. Again, accessible, affordable higher education. So it's a pathway. The good news is that our transfer rates have increased about 11% system-wide over the last 5-6 years, even with the pandemic. And at LACCD, our transfer rates have increased 18% over the last period since 2018. So we're seeing many students begin here, finish at CDU, begin here, finish at a CSU or a UC, and the other private universities. So Dr. Carlisle and I were just at a meeting with the mayor in which we had a roundtable of college and university presidents, and it was impressive. Meeting with the mayor and saying we have this intellectual energy, authority to educate the citizens of Los Angeles County. utilize this network, this ecosystem of higher ed with different types of institutions, public and private, 2-year and 4-year, master's and PhD granting, to lift Los Angeles, to amplify the opportunities for people to prosperity, to ensure that we have the workforce and the educated citizenry that Los Angeles County needs to thrive, and to do so, most importantly, in an equitable way, one that includes, not excludes, one that embraces diversity and equity and inclusion, and one that views, as Dr. Carlisle so eloquently put, language, culture, and identity as value added to this equation that we call living in Los Angeles and thriving in Los Angeles. So we're all interdependent. And I really felt that sense of interdependence that Dr. Carlisle, being with the mayor, being with you, and others saying, hey, we're here to support and to make sure every Angelino has the opportunity to pursue whatever dream they might have. You know, perhaps at the very beginning, you asked me, what do you do? I'm a chief opportunity officer. I'm the COO. I'll say that. Yeah, through our colleges and universities. Yeah, so anyway, I'll stop there. But we have transfer is a major function. 4-year total, start here, finish there.
I love it. I love it. And when I was at Antelope Valley College, I did IGETC, the Intersectional General Education Transfer Curriculum. So, and that worked for me.
Yep.
So Dr. Carlisle, thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. So Dr. Carlisle, I have a question for you. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science, it's historically been a graduate institution. However, CDU has implemented some great undergraduate programs in biomedical sciences, psychology, public health, nursing. Why should a student interested in a career in healthcare actually transfer to Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science?
I'll use that expression. I think this came out of World War I. And it's basically, you know, pointing the finger, going, we want you. And so that's a message to all the community college students out there. We want you. And I'm not just talking about Charles R. Drew. I'm talking about the health professions. We want you to become a registered nurse. We want you to become a licensed vocational nurse. We want you to become a doctor. We want you to become a physician assistant. We want you to become a radiologic technician, a public health expert. The reason we want you is because you represent the communities that we serve. You are the communities that we serve. As you get older, you're more likely to become a patient. Your parents, your grandparents are the patients we serve. And they want to be taken care of by people who look like them and speak the same language, identify with them, respect them, and feel empathetic toward them. And that's what we get from community college students. We know that community college students can go all the way and become, say, the best dentist out there, the best physicians out there, the best psychologists out there, because of what they bring to the table, because of the challenges that they've had to overcome every step of the way. If you want a student who's motivated and successful, you know, that's your community college student. So yes, we want you to go into higher education at CDU, ideally, but not necessarily. We definitely want you to go into the health professions.
I love that. Thank you, Dr. Carlisle. That's wonderful. I'm motivated.
Yep, me too. Me too. This is great. And that's part of talent. Yeah, and that's part of my job as the director of community college partnerships, which is to establish these partnerships and opportunities for collaborations with our local community colleges. So once again, let's shift the conversation. We all know about the Supreme Court of the United States decision to gut affirmative action. I know we at GW, we saw it coming, you know, so with the future of education, I know, Dr. Carlisle, you are going to discuss, or you did have a conversation on this topic. What came out of it is that schools like CDU and HBCUs would now have to do a lot of the work. So this question is for the both of you. What does this decision of gutting affirmative action, how will that impact how community colleges provide services to our BIPOC students? And how would this decision impact CDU and how we serve how we serve the students? So I'll start with you, Chancellor Rodriguez.
Well, it's important. Thank you for that question. Yes, it was a very troubling decision. We wrote to that matter as an institution, expressing our dismay and disappointment in that particular decision. While community colleges are open access, it does impact our higher education ecosystem, because when our students transfer, to the discussion that we just had, if and indeed for some of the more elite institutions, and for California, which has been under the aegis of Proposition 209 since the mid-90s, the consideration of race and gender cannot be used in university admissions, public contracting, or in hiring. So it has had a detrimental effect to diversify the student body at the rate that it could have been, the workforce and faculty members at the rate that it could have been, and certainly for those who want to do business with the University of California and with the state of California. We've had Prop 209 in our midst for some time. So this decision, I think, reverses the progress that colleges and universities have made to ensure that historically underrepresented, marginalized, and under-resourced communities all have access to an equitable and affordable college education. So that's, but it's important also to know that there's still a lot of guidance and a lot of things that we still can do. We can still design and implement strategies and programs that remove barriers and expand opportunity. Nothing in the SCOTUS decision, nothing prohibits our institutions from continuing to recruit, admit, and graduate racially diverse student bodies, including targeted outreach and recruitment, and developing pathways and pipelines, programs for first-generation college attendees, low-income students, students who have disabilities, the formerly incarcerated students who are former foster care, LGBTQIA plus students, undocumented students, women, and other underrepresented students in STEM and healthcare. Nothing in that decision prohibits this, so long as you don't use race as a preference. We can also use the collection of demographic data that includes race, ethnicity, gender, and ability status to monitor if there are indeed equity gaps in achievement and in reaching important critical milestones that our institutions might have, to monitor equity, to monitor progress, to monitor reaching, as I mentioned, those critical milestones. And also we can still engage in retention strategies and programs so that students can receive an abundance of services, such as counseling, advising, financial aid, and other kinds of student supports, where students feel a sense of belonging, a connectedness, an engagement, where they're frankly valued and seen at places like CDU and at LACCD, and supported on campus. And for us, it's essential to have faculty that look like our students, administrators and staff that look and come from our neighborhoods, and that they develop responsive curriculum. All these strategies are still allowable, and representation matters. So I believe it's educationally purposeful that we have, continued opportunities through what exists. We're not going to let this squash our interest, our enthusiasm for remedying what has been sanctioned exclusion because of race, because of gender. And I believe the way to remedy that is to be race conscious when we engage in admissions and outreach and recruitment. So again, we have to fall within the legal guidelines, but we have been emboldened by this matter, and it's been galvanizing for those of us who believe in equity, like Dr. Carlisle and yourself and others, that these are the struggles, these are the challenges, and now we have people in positions of influence and authority, like ourselves, who can continue to move on the equity agenda and to provide resources so that we can actualize the potential of every individual.
I love it. Dr. Carlisle?
I certainly agree with everything that Chancellor Rodriguez has said. You know, when you go back to the 1990s, and this is an area that I actually was doing research in, you could look at the upward trajectory of diversity among medical students in the United States year after year. There was a program called Project 3000 by 2000, 3,000 medical students from underrepresented populations by the year 2000. The country was on course to hit that target. And then in California, there was Prop 209. And then in the fifth district, the Fifth Circuit, Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, there was a court decision that was anti-affirmative action also. And all of a sudden, the numbers dropped across the country, primarily in California and the southern US, and the rate of growth dropped as well. And we stayed there for a number of years. As Chancellor Rodriguez said, in California, we've been living in a post-Prop 209 environment since 1966. Despite that, Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is still and remains the second most diverse private not-for-profit university in the country. Why is that? How is that? We don't use racial and ethnic preferences in our admissions. How can we be diverse? Well, it's because of who we are, where we are, and what we do. We have a preference for students from the under-resourced populations of South Los Angeles and similar communities around the country. We have a preference for students that have traveled far from a socioeconomic basis. They may be first generation, parents that have never been and never gone to college. They may not even know who their parents are, but they're coming far. And by the time they graduate, they're doctors, they're nurses, they're very successful. We want a student that has demonstrated already that they've come far when they apply to us. And then the other question that I get asked all the time is, Dr. Carlisle, how do I get my son or daughter into your medical school? You know, what's the secret sauce? And I say, well, they need more than good MCAT scores and good GPAs. We want to see somebody who doesn't just talk the talk about being of service to an underserved community.
Mm-hmm.
We want somebody who has demonstrated years of commitment to walking the walk. And if you walk the walk, if you have traveled far, if you've overcome hurdles, you are a perfect CDU student. I was just talking to one of our alumni the other day. She's a pediatric oncologist. And, you know, I said to the class after she signed off, you know, she's a healthcare angel because she's exactly the perfect student at CDU that we want. And here she is now taking care of the most challenging patients out there with open arms and a warm heart. And that's the type of person that we get at CDU. And we will continue to get them despite the SCOTUS decision because of what we've been doing for years to become the second most diverse university in the country.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Dr. Carter?
Of course.
You know, wow, I'm just feeling this discussion is so topical and so powerful and so important and relevant. I also believe that on the heels of the SCOTUS decision, those of us, like myself, who were products and beneficiaries of a system that said, you know, we're going to give you a hand up, not a handout, and walk through the front door of these institutions. They don't lower standards for folks who come in through affirmative action. They don't, the curriculum, the teaching, the pedagogy, and then for me, navigating a predominantly white institution took some gumption. It took some resistance and it took some navigating so that I didn't make myself a casualty and drop out. So, and that resilience that came from my cultural wealth capital, as you so eloquently pointed out, it allowed others like us who look like us to persist in these institutions that were not initially designed for folks like that. So I think we need to speak out, stand up, and be proud products of this program that has allowed access and opportunity for communities of color for decades. It works, and we've seen the benefits of that. So when we have these strident anti-affirmative action or anti-immigrant or an anti these, you know, humane policies that come out in these areas, I think those of us who are in positions of authority need to speak out and stand up for these as beneficiaries of the exact program that we now are benefiting from.
Absolutely.
If I may append on to that
Sure.
also, Dr. Carter, I would say back at you, I am affirmative action. I'm sure that I have received the hand up throughout my educational career, but I've had to pass every board examination. I've had to pass every licensure examination. I've had to pass every specialty examination, just like everybody else.
Right.
And so that hand up empowered me to add to the diversity of the medical profession. At CDU, we use a phrase, a house that's built for you is better than one where you're just a visitor. And for all those students out there, community college students, other students from South LA who've traveled a long way, we are the house that is built for you, as so many other institutions are, like our LA County community colleges.
Love it.
I love it too. I love it too. And I was about to put it in the chat, but when you all talked about Proposition 209, that went into effect as I was transferring from Antelope Valley College to UC San Diego. And for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with UCSD, that's one of the largest UCs in the system. When I was a student there, I believe we had 5 colleges. When I left, we had 6. So, learning how to navigate that system, it was difficult. But, I belong there just like everyone else. It's along the lines of what research scholar, education scholar, Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings spoke about. She talked about the education debt. And she said that that's the debt that's owed to Black and Brown folks who have been historically excluded from our education system. So affirmative action is not a handout, right? It's repaying the debt that is owed to people who helped to build this country, right? To make this country great, right? So that's what it's all about. All right, let me not start preaching. I'm about to get excited. So let's talk about workforce development, because you, Chancellor Rodriguez, you pricked my ears when you use that phrase, workforce development.
Yes.
So I know when I was working in Washington, D.C., there was a lot of talk about apprenticeship programs, right? And so a lot of students are saying, hey, I want to go to college and, just get into all this debt. I want to work. So can you talk to us a little bit about apprenticeship programs and the roles that community college play?
Thank you. Well, it's part of our essential academic and curricular fabric to engage, develop, and offer workforce development programs and apprenticeships. And it's been around for a very long period of time. People think that apprenticeships are new, but indeed they're not. It's essentially, earn while you learn. It's kind of a simple way to look at it. Apprenticeships typically are industry driven, and they're high quality career pathways in areas such as healthcare, in areas such as cybersecurity, in areas such as the other trades that we are so historically been associated with indeed apprenticeships. Our governor laid out a goal of 500,000 apprenticeships by the year 2029, and we're currently under 100,000. So we've got some work to do between now and then to provide people the opportunity. And these are, in some cases, industry professionals who come back to school through an apprenticeship because they may have learned the theoretical knowledge through their coursework, but that don't have the hands-on experience. The benefits to the student are to clarify their goal, to get a sense of what the profession is like, to be in the profession, to earn while they are learning, and to understand the nuances and the connections and the networks that they can make within that particular profession. The benefits to the employer are also significant. You get a chance to see whether this is someone who you might hire. You get a chance to see whether you're doing some talent acquisition. You're filling the skills gap that are so important for so many of our professions in Los Angeles County and indeed the country. So it's really a win-win when you provide a structured environment that is supervised, that is supported, that is compensated for the student to learn while they're earning. So apprenticeship is a great tool, and we hope that employers will open up paid apprenticeships. It's beyond internships where you go for a few hours, get a couple of unit credit hours. It really formalizes that process a lot more to where you're in a learning, structured, supervised an environment that could lead towards not just skills development, but indeed employment, which is the aim here. We need skilled workers in healthcare. We need skilled talent in healthcare. So apprenticeships is a perfect way to build, amplify that pipeline in an equitable way that represents the communities that we're proud to serve.
Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. President Carlisle, CDU, it's an innovative school. So how could an apprenticeship program work at the university?
Well, apprenticeships are part of health professions education. Every step in the way, you sort of see one, do one, teach one, and you climb further and further and further and further. You're a pre-med student, you're a medical student, you're an intern, you're a resident. Every step in the way, there's somebody working with you who is 1, 2, 3, or more steps ahead of you, who is pulling you along and pushing you as necessary. And that's part of the tradition of health professions education. We work with preceptors who are very dependent upon these direct interpersonal interactions. And so CU, like every other health profession school, uses, I wouldn't call them apprenticeships formally, but they're essentially the same thing, because they're introducing younger people with more experience. And that's how healthcare education works.
Thank you, President Carlisle. So I want to stay on this topic of workforce development. So you talked about that, but I want you to talk just a little bit more about CDU, because we do such a great job at developing the next generation of healthcare professionals. Do you see that changing in the next decade, Dr. Carlisle?
No. We have a bona fide significant gap in the number of health professionals of every type, maybe with an exception or two, and the need for them in the state of California. And if there's no overall gap, there's certainly a gap in the distribution of healthcare professionals, even in those professions where we think we might have enough people. So, I mean, if I look at the big picture, I think of the fact that the United States spends way more money on healthcare than any other country in the world. But we don't have the healthcare outcomes to support that expenditures. We're lagging behind virtually all the other industrialized nations. And the reason is people in our country can't get access to the excellent, wonderful, spectacular healthcare system that we have in this country. And so to what we're doing to address that is training more healthcare professionals who say, the reason I want to become a nurse, the reason I want to become a dentist, the reason I want to become a doctor, a PA, is to go back to the underserved community I grew up in and make it a better place. And that is a CDU student.
I love it. So we're coming down the finish line, gentlemen. So let's talk a little bit about professional advice. Asking for a
Listen
friend.
to Dr. Carlisle.
Asking for a friend. So what advice would you give to a person in the doctoral program who aspires to have a career in higher education, administration, and leadership?
Do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Tell me more, Chancellor Rodriguez.
I think do it. It's it's an opportunity to use your talent, your skills, and your influence to empower and enable others. I really like that phrase. To build systems, architecture, to make hires, to draw curriculum, to engage with the community, to provide opportunity to students and the community for an excellent and affordable higher education. We know that higher education is, when it occurs and it occurs well, allows people to live longer, more prosperous lives. There's wage earnings that are associated with higher education. They live less dependent on social services. There's less, problems, etc. So the benefits of a higher education are documented and multifold. So this ability through a college administration to influence that environment where greatness happens, I think is a noble goal. Now, you don't have to be an administrator. You can be an excellent instructor, excellent counselor, excellent financial aid technician. I mean, we're all part of the same ecosystem, but whatever it is, understand how your role contributes towards a larger goal of the success of students that must remain our North Star always. And do so, and to look at data when we have equity gaps, to address those gaps, and then to monitor to ensure that we're directing the resources to where they can have the most impact on those who could benefit the most. So it's a yes, I would. And the last thing I would say, there are doctoral students who are thinking about higher ed, use your doctoral journey, your process to build capacity, build a resume, have all your assignments and your readings and the papers that you write and your dissertation, tool you up for the kind of environment you want to be in. Don't just look at these as assignments. Use them as stepping stones, as components of an educational journey and an educational narrative of how you want to impact and improve this world through higher education. So that's the advice that I would provide, and it's certainly been for me incredibly. The satisfaction, the reward has been incredible. I've been at the helm of a college or institution since 1999 in one way or another. And before then, as the lowest level, starting as the lowest level classified worker in the University of California. And, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. And, it's not where you begin, it's where you finish. I tell the students. So use these building blocks to move forward and never lose sight of the goal and never lose sight of the confidence and the greatness that you have within yourself, and to use mentors and others to support you along the way. None of us do this journey alone. We're all the products of a lot of hands, a lot of arms embracing us.
Yes, indeed. And I'm a product of a lot of arms embracing me at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. So I'm biased. All right, Dr. Carlisle, what advice would you give to someone in a doctoral program wishing to, go into higher ed and leadership?
I'd say it's definitely a good idea. There are great jobs, great careers to be had in higher education. And as Chancellor Rodriguez said, I would say go for it, do it. And the best reward you get as an educator is seeing your students succeed.
Amen.
Absolutely. Nothing makes me prouder than walking out on our campus in the afternoon when I'm kind of tired, my caffeine is wearing off, and I need to get my batteries recharged. And I stop and talk to students. And I'll typically ask them, hey, where are you from? And they'll say something like, I'm from Watts. I'm from Compton. I'm right around the corner on 120th and Central. And that tells me that we're doing exactly what we were put here to do by bringing these young people into higher education and on into health profession careers. So it doesn't get more rewarding and more meaningful than that. Yeah. And I'm sure that that's why Chancellor Rodriguez and I are both here, because we're reaping these rewards. At the same time, we're enabling young people to be successful. So we have a new acronym now. CEO stands for Chief Enabling Officer.
Right. I love it. I love it.
I love it too. I love it. I love it. At the finish line. We talked about the good things, and I remember taking a class. It was about turnaround leadership. So I want to ask you both, what has been the most challenging part about your position? I'll start with you, President Carlisle.
Well, a CDU did almost close probably 15 years ago. We were in a very challenging situation, and I think what makes me proudest about the university is how people pulled together and work together. And not just from within the university, from outside the university as well, to not let this university kind of wither and die on the vine. People made personal sacrifices, and so it's paid off, because now students are coming to the university. But I have to take my hat off to our staff who went through this before I arrived at the university. Those were some very, very challenging times. And fortunately, we did not fold, we did not knuckle under. We're here today because we're still serving the people of South Los Angeles and communities like it around the state. You know, when you ask people why you're at CDU, and whether they're an employee, a faculty member, or a student, they'll typically say, I'm here because of the mission of this university, to train young people from under-resourced populations to become health professionals, to go back and serve the communities they grew up in.
Wow, thank you. That's amazing. And I believe we had started at the same time. I started in January and you came a few months later. So yes, I remember. Chancellor Rodriguez, what's the most challenging part of your job?
Well, there are many challenging parts of it. I mean, and it could vary by week, by month, or by year, depending on what the challenges are as a public institution. So as the state goes, we go. If the state is healthy, community colleges are generally healthy. If the state goes into a recession or the nation goes into a recession, there are less resources. So that kind of variability is a challenge. So you have to plan for that kind of event so that you can smooth out the edges and smooth out the ride when it can be volatile. So that's certainly, and that requires some tough decision making, and it requires long-term planning, and it requires having a clear sense of what your mission is and what your priorities are. Not everything is a priority, and ultimately a budget should be a reflection of your priorities. A challenging part is to decide what to not do. It's easier in some ways. Oh, what are we going to do about X? And get into a planning session, an innovation session, a charrette, and draw all kinds of opportunity. People like that. But do the same and ask the question, what do we stop doing that hasn't been as effective or has assisted and has served our students or our community in the way that warrants the investment? It's a much more difficult conversation, but that's exactly the kinds of conversations we have and have to facilitate. It's leadership by design or by default. And unfortunately, when we're reacting, it's by default. So I choose to run this institution in a proactive way, to be responsive, to be entrepreneurial, to be opportunistic, as opposed to, passive and reactive and whatnot. That's sometimes you have to move into that space. So the pace of change can be frustrating when we're not a public institution that is so heavily regulated, like you folks are. You're externally monitored and regulated pretty heavily, and some of that is necessary. But as a public institution, there's a lot of regulations that we have to abide by. We're not quite as nimble as we could be in some ways, because we're restricted because of the nature of our agency as a public two-year institution. So the pace of change, and I'm not a very patient person, so that's hard for me. But I've learned to be institutionally, organizationally patient, because I know that change is a coming, and change has occurred. And over the the span of my career here, and almost 4 decades in California public higher education, I've seen good work occur over time. So I want to commend Dr. Carlisle for his stability, his energy, his excellence in representing your institution. And long-term stability matters in leading an organization through the good times and through the not so good times. So CDU is, I think, very privileged, that I would say, and I'm honored to be his colleague.
You do. And back at you, Chancellor Rodriguez, absolutely. Going all the way back to Sacramento and the old days there,
That's
working
right.
together
Right.
to benefit young people.
Wow, that's great. And for our audience, it lets you know that this is a small world. So watch how you treat people, right? Watch how you treat people, watch how you engage in people, because we're all colleagues. We're in this together.
That's right.
So we've come to the end of our program. I just want to take this time to thank you, Chancellor Francisco Rodriguez, for joining us in the Lion's Den, as well as President David Carlisle. Thank you so much for joining me today. So my name is Dr. Ashanti Carter. I serve as the Director of Community College Partnerships here at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science. And in honor of National Transfer Student Week, thank you so much for joining us. Have a powerful night. Gentlemen, stay on. All
Thank you.
right, goodbye, everybody.